that, you know, without immigrants, we won't have an economy, blah, blah. That's all been exploded now this last few months. We've seen the figures. So if you'd have said to me, Nick, do you think Labour government have increased the amount of hotels for illegal immigrants or decreased? I would have put my house on. They probably increased them, haven't they?
Yeah.
You can't make this shit up.
That is scandalous.
And we need as people off benefits and into work for their own sake, for no one else's sake, for their sake. And we begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 58 of The Mayor and I, with me, Lindsay Khan, and the Mayor, Nick Buckley, MBE.
The Mayor that should have been.
The Mayor that should have been. He will be the Mayor one day. And it's our weekly chat. Episode, what was it, 59?
58.
58, our weekly chat about events in the news that we're interested in, covering those various bits and pieces, me asking questions and Nick giving his views. If you like what you see, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment if possible. And welcome, Nick Buckley.
Thank you.
Pleased to see you. I wanted to ask you to give a plug first, if that's okay. And I don't know
about my book.
No, I think we've seen enough of that, Nick. But while we're here, Nick's book is out. New book is out, England, My England. It's doing very well now. Good reviews.
It's doing well at Amazon.
Best-selling book so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're very pleased. And I believe you're going on Dan Wotton next week.
This Friday.
In
a couple of days' time, and I sent him a copy of my book, and I don't think he's read it all, but he's read some of it and went, "Come on the show and let's talk about it."
Fantastic. So that, I think he's brilliant anyway, that
Yeah.
guy. So I'm going to ask you for a plug first, not your book.
Yep.
There's a petition out at the moment, a government petition. I don't know if you've seen
There is, yes.
And it's simply call a general election petition. It's a very simple, literally about a paragraph. I can't remember the guy's name who's put it in. And it's already garnered over 2 million signatures. So I was assuming you would support it, Nick.
Yeah.
But I've been having a big row on a WhatsApp group I'm in with a few of the characters on there saying it's not worth doing, it's a waste of time, a general election won't happen, etc., etc. And I've been arguing against them. But I think what I was going to ask you to do was kind of promote it here and post it on your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But what I assumed that you would have the same views as me, and do you have the same views as me? What are your views about these kind of things?
It all depends why you're signing the petition. If you're signing the petition thinking we're going to get enough signatures and that's going to bring down the government, or Starmer's going to look at it and go, do you know what? I'm not wanted. I shall resign. That ain't going to happen. This is just a good opportunity for people who are disgruntled, for people who don't like the way the country's going, for people who may have voted Labour and have realised they lied to me for months during the campaign, and for people who just dislike Labour and the way the country's going anyway, to come together and voice their concern and say, this isn't what we want, and we're calling for a general election, which we know we're not going to get because of this. But it's pulling people together and letting them know you're not alone. You're not in an echo chamber where it's just you and your three mates going, everything's crap and this is crap and I'm crap and they're crap. It's more than that. I mean, it's been signed now, I just looked 10 minutes ago, 2.1 million times. That's well over 2 million people now in this country going, we're fed up. It isn't going the way we want it to go. And we're going to hold the Prime Minister responsible. Now, it isn't all Keir Starmer's fault. No, most of the blame should be put on the Tory party as well, because they know that they've been in power 14 years. But Starmer's making things worse after 14 years of Tories making it terrible. So yeah, sign it and have your voice heard. But don't sign it thinking this is going to bring down the government. But what it might do and what it will do, it will add extra pressure on the government. So it's harder for them to say now, we're a popular party. We're doing what the people want us to do. Well, not for those 2 million, not are you? It's going to embarrass Starmer in many different spheres. So in Parliament, other MPs now can have a go at Starmer over the petition.
Yeah.
Foreign leaders will be laughing at him going, oh, you're not as popular as you thought. it just adds an extra layer of pressure, a tiny amount of pressure, but it's an extra piece of pressure he didn't want. And then the cumulative effects of that over, another 20, 30, 100 things happening may bring the government down, but this by itself will not. It'll be ignored. But you know what? We're being ignored anyway.
Yeah.
And the fact this is getting press attention, it's all over the media, foreign outlets, press outlets are talking about it. It's having some impact.
Yeah. It is already having impact, and as I say, I've been having a debate, which I'll come to in a minute, on a WhatsApp group. Elon Musk has seen it. So somebody posted it. At the time it was 1 million, somebody posted it. And Elon Musk posted something like, time to get rid of this Stasi government, or whatever it might be. And then in the same article, somebody then asked Keir Starmer about it on a chat show, whatever. And he had to defend himself. And so it's already had a massive impact, I think. And the publicity is fantastic out there. But it comes down to a very, very fundamental question, because I was having this debate on this WhatsApp group. I won't mention what it is. I don't want to incriminate anybody who doesn't want their names known. But it's a group that is basically set up of people who have similar views to me and to you. And one of the chaps described it as howling at the wind. So one of the ladies on the group said, "I'm signing this because if 2 million people, if the government sees 2 million people, they'll know that they're not popular. They'll know this." And this chap just said, "Oh, you're howling at the wind." Then I rather unfairly said, "Well, what are you doing?" I won't mention his name. I said, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, what are you doing to make a difference?" And he described that he was chatting to I won't say what he does for a living, but it was kind of nothing, And then somebody else came on and said, if doing something and doing nothing has the same result, why not do something? And I think that's a really, really good point. But I think my point for the viewers is, do something. If you can do something, do something. Even if it's signing a petition, just register your disapproval in some way. But doing nothing, I think, is not an option if you're unhappy with this government.
I agree. Doing nothing isn't an option anymore in this country. Do something. Even if it doesn't make any difference, even if you're completely ignored, even if you set the petition up and 4 people signed it and it was a complete failure, well, at least you did something.
Yeah.
Because if you're waiting to only take part in something that is definitely going to change the country, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah.
Because we never know what changes the country.
Correct.
No one saw the fall of the Berlin Wall. The CIA, MI6, no one saw the Berlin Wall fall overnight. And we've got spies everywhere.
Yeah.
But because people had had enough and people decided they were going to do something, that led to that. So do something, even if it's pathetic, even if it doesn't mean anything, even if it doesn't add any benefit to anything. You doing something, the least it's doing is proving to yourself you're not a coward.
Yes.
And that is so valuable because you've done something now. I'm not a coward.
Yeah.
That might give you the courage to then do something else next week.
Yeah.
And the week after.
Yeah.
And maybe those things will be more beneficial. I don't know.
Yeah.
But living your life as a coward and going, I'm not taking part in that because it's useless. What that usually means is, I'm too afraid to do something, and I'm only going to take a risk when I'm guaranteed it's going to win.
Yeah.
That time never arrives.
Yeah.
You've got to take a chance. You've got to be courageous, and you've got to risk things going wrong, and you having consequences for signing that petition.
Yeah.
Because in every fight there has to be consequences.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not a fight, is it?
Yeah. And I think people are scared to sign the petition because you have to put your email address on, don't you? So you put your email address on, they email it, and then you have to validate it.
Yeah.
And I genuinely think, and it sounds bizarre, I think people are scared to do that because they don't want to put their email address on.
And that's where the courage comes from.
Yeah.
By saying, don't forget, this is a government petition. The government now has your name, details, and email address.
And they know you've actually... Yeah.
And you've had to validate it by going in your email to validate that you've just voted on that. So do it.
Yeah.
Don't be a coward.
Take the risk.
Take the risk. Do it. Don't be a coward.
Yeah.
And tomorrow you'll wake up a little braver than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And if you can become braver, maybe then you can do something positive for this country.
And interestingly, on this WhatsApp group, obviously I've been having this quite heated discussion. I think I sent you some excerpts from it. Quite a discussion. But every time I put something down, I get lots of likes and thumbs up. When the guys who aren't signing it, they're getting no likes at all from the group. because it is about courage, isn't it? The people who have signed it, they feel a bit better about themselves, don't they? You know, and I think it's a fantastic thing. So you and I aren't concerned. You've already crossed that Rubicon years ago in terms of it. I for various reasons aren't worried about what happens to me, but these little things, we've discussed before, having a conversation with somebody at a dinner party when they say something stupid, to comment on it or whatever, they matter, don't they?
Yeah.
And this podcast now is also an example of that, isn't it? I started to come here because I wanted to express my dislike of what was happening, the free speech, COVID, all that stuff, or whatever. We're doing it now. You're now up to nearly 25,000.
25,000, yeah.
25,000 subscribers. Some of your videos now go out to 150,000 people, seen by 150,000 people.
One of ours is nearly hitting 200,000.
Is it?
Yeah. The one about Keir Starmer's dirty little secret.
Oh yeah.
It's something like 199,000
views. I didn't know that. Wow.
It's getting very close to 200,000.
So I mean, that is actually quite really thrilling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because 200,000 people is a substantial percentage of this country's population, isn't it? You're actually hitting a large number of people there. Yeah. And that has got to be making a difference, hasn't it?
I hope so. I mean, it has to. You can't quantify it.
Yeah.
But, you know, out of those 200,000 people who watched that one video, if 10% of them feel a bit more courageous and speak up a little bit more, who then trigger their friends to speak up a little bit more, it's that ripple effect. And our videos are not going to change the world or change the country, but we can contribute to the bigger picture. That, you know, if we do our bit, and let's say we empower 50 people this year.
Yeah.
Well, 50 people's nothing, but we've done our bit.
Well,
and if other people do their bit and they empower 50 people to take charge of their lives and stand up for their country, and everyone starts doing that, next thing you know, you've got millions of people.
Yeah. But you're right, it's that ripple effect, isn't it? And also people see us talking openly about this government and how horrific they are and the things they're doing. And we come back the next week, we've not been arrested.
Yeah.
We've not been thrown in prison. Even though we probably said things on here that some of the people who are in jail have said as well. We've not been arrested, we've not been thrown in jail. So you can say stuff and you can survive and you can carry on, can't you? And the more people who are saying stuff, the less likely you are to be in danger as well.
Exactly. And the bigger profile you've got, the less likely you to be in danger. Now, part of the tyranny we suffer at the moment in this country is self-inflicted tyranny, because people have started to think, I'm not allowed to say this, I'm not allowed to say that. So they then self-censor and stop talking and having the conversations they want because they've scared themselves. I'm not willing to scare myself. I'm not willing to live like that. I'm willing to be arrested. I don't want to go to jail by any means. I'm not a tough man at all. I don't want to go to jail. But if it's a choice between living in fear or risk going to jail, then I'm going to risk going to jail because I'm not willing to live on my knees. I'd rather die on my feet.
Yeah.
And I'm very careful with what I say.
Yeah.
You know, I try not to be a maverick. I don't say things to get clicks and views. Everything I say, I mean. And most of the things I say are basically questions because I'm still trying to find answers.
Yeah.
But I'm not prepared to have my internal safety dictate to me what I can say and basically turn me into a coward. I'm not prepared for that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious, isn't it? But I really appreciate what you're doing. So are you going to put the link for this website on?
It'll be in the description of the video.
Yeah.
Sign a petition. And I've already done the thumbnail for this because I knew you were going to ask about this. So the thumbnail for this little clip is all about the petition.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it will be great. The more people who can sign it, the better. It's great, and you're right. I think another great thing is it kind of validates, even though we knew it, that we're not alone. That people despise this government and everything they do.
And when the people on the left who are arguing about this and they're saying, that's not very democratic of you, is it?
Yeah.
Calling for a general election. We've just had a general election. You're the type of person who criticised me when I wanted another referendum for the EU, Brexit membership. Yeah. And now you're saying completely different things altogether. I think if people want to have another referendum on the EU, and they can garner enough support and get their politicians to enact it in law, Well, good for you. That's called a democratic process.
Yeah.
What the anti-Brexit people were trying to do was thwart the democratic vote without going back, without implementing it first. We've implemented the general election. Labour's in power. It's our right to call for a general election anytime we want, and it's their right to ignore us, and that's democratic of the government to ignore us.
Yeah.
So having people say to you, this is undemocratic, no it isn't, this is democracy.
Yeah. I'll move on from this now, because I've already asked you to do one thing in this. I'm going to suggest something else to you, and I'm interested to know what your opinion is. We've been talking a lot about the Altrincham and the Cresta Court, haven't we? I mean, just before we get into this, I just want to tell you some more information which I found out today, which is basically about what the government is not doing and should have been doing. So one of the promises of Labour, again, the reason that this petition has been signed is, and the guys put it very simply, is you've not done what you promised in the lead up to the election. That's what it's saying. But one of the things they said they'd do was stop putting immigrants, asylum seekers, not asylum seekers, what are they?
Illegal immigrants.
Illegal immigrants. I must stop calling them asylum seekers, in hotels. So apparently, since they've been in control, the number of hotels full of asylum seekers was originally 213. It hasn't gone down, Nick.
That doesn't surprise me. If you'd have said to me, Nick, do you think Labour government have increased the amount of hotels for illegal immigrants or decreased? I would have put my house on. They probably increased them, haven't they?
Yeah. So it's gone up from 213 to 220 hotels.
Yeah.
So more have actually been filled, but quite a few have actually emptied. So they're trying desperately, but they have overall gone up. And there's now, and these numbers are starting to actually coalesce, that, because you and I have been banning these numbers around, but they do actually make sense. So there's 30,000 asylum seekers in hotels now.
No.
30,000 in those two. I don't know what, you're very good at maths, I don't know what that is per hotel. Is it like 500 a hotel or something? 150 in each hotel.
Right.
So there's 30,000 asylum seekers. And this is a number that staggered me, even though you and I often speak about this number, which is that the cost of those 30,000 is 4.2 billion. Now, I worked that out to be £140,000 per immigrant, illegal immigrant. Isn't that a hell of a lot of money?
Yeah.
140 grand. Can that be right?
It's not just the hotel room they're buying. It's the staffing of it, it's the extra security, it's the food, it's the translators, it's everything.
It's a free bus pass.
Yeah, I mean, Trafford Council...
Private health.
Yeah. So Trafford Council have put out job advertisements now to work in the Cresta Court. Room cleaners.
So, right, they're not cleaning their own rooms?
No. We're now hiring people to clean the rooms of the illegal immigrants we're funding to stay in a 3-4 star hotel in Altrincham. We're cleaning their rooms.
Yes.
A friend of mine phoned me up. Yeah, that was a phone call a couple of days ago saying, I watched your Cresta Court stuff the other day. I'm actually driving past Cresta Court now, and there was snow on the ground. And he says every bedroom window's wide open because they must have the heating on so high in there. They've had to open all the windows, and round the corner will be some freezing pensioners somewhere.
Yeah.
But they've got all the windows
it's so
open.
Hot there, they've had to open the windows.
The windows. You can't make this shit up.
That is scandalous.
He's talking to me on the phone. He goes, I parked outside the Cresta Court to let you know all the windows are open. I only can think of it's because it's so hot inside and there's snow on the ground outside.
Yeah, and so that's why it's costing us 140 grand a year for each of these characters in there. But it's not just the heating, is it? It's so you're right. Our pensioners are freezing around the corner because they've not got the winter fuel allowance. The asylum seekers who are not even native to this country, who've got here illegally, are roasting in there, and they have room cleaners. So presumably when they pop out to go and get their private health care, the room cleaners come in and clean the room, and then they get an allowance and they get free travel and everything else as well. That is just scandalous. If
I'd have told you this 20 years ago, no way anybody would have believed this. That this is what we would be doing 20 years from now.
we'll have 30,000 people living in hotels, rent-free, getting fed, everything else, at your cost, whilst our pensioners are freezing around the corner.
See, there might be 30,000 living in hotels now, but where was the 30,000 that came last year, and the 50,000 that came the year before, the 70,000 that came the year before that? They're not in hotels anymore.
Where are they?
Where are they? We're still paying for their accommodation. They're just not in hotels.
Right.
So they'll be in council houses, they'll be in housing association houses, they'll be in B&Bs.
Yes.
There'll be somewhere else that we're still paying for.
Yes. So there's another 70,000 elsewhere, and they're costing £3 billion, basically. So there's 100,000 in total that we're being told about at the moment.
Yeah.
That's costing us around £7 billion a year. 7 billion, Nick. It's not like pennies. It's a lot of money.
7 billion is when you most people couldn't even quantify what 7 billion is.
Yes.
It's that much money.
Yeah.
You can't get your head round.
Yeah.
7 billion. It's very similar to 7 million. It just means a lot, but it's a lot more.
And we go back to our reference, don't we? That the number to compare that to is a 1.5 billion that we're saving by freezing our pensioners to death. So we're spending 7 billion on people who don't even belong in this country, and people who were born here, who've worked here, who paid their taxes all through their lives, round the corner of freezing to death.
Yep.
I think you had an example the other day of somebody. I think I was watching one of your videos of a guy, homeless guy, freezing whilst the asylum seekers are getting...
Yeah, he died outside.
Oh, did he?
The Palace Theatre Hotel in Manchester City Centre.
Oh, right. When was this? Recently?
Last week.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was last week. Discovered asleep, in a sleeping bag, unresponsive, taken to hospital, declared dead. So died. Yep.
So, this is my next request. Apparently there's a thing called the Recall Act. Have you heard of this?
Recall Act. Is that for MPs?
Yes.
Is that when it's something like if you can get so many thousand signatures,
yes,
or an MP is convicted of a certain crime,
yes,
you can recall that and have a by-election or something.
Yeah. So you've heard it here first, folks. If, say, I don't know what the votes for the Labour MP in Altrincham were. Let's say there were 30,000.
Yeah.
If you can get 3,000 votes, which is 10% of that 30,000, from the voters in Altrincham, they can call a by-election, basically.
Right. Is it 10% of his vote or is it 10% of the electorate?
10% of his vote, I think. I think it is. I can find out.
Right, yeah. But it's more likely to be the electorate.
What my suggestion is this. They're clearly in Altrincham, people in Altrincham are clearly disgruntled and unhappy at the moment. I think, given your profile and the fact that people are very interested, people are talking to you about this all the time, aren't they? The Altrincham thing. I think if you could, with your profile, garner 3,000 votes or whatever, which is 10% of whatever it is, we could call a by-election there. You could stand as the new MP there under either an independent ticket or a reform ticket and then win that and then become an MP. That's my idea. What do you think? You know, you were talking about doing something rather than doing nothing earlier.
Yeah.
I'm putting you under pressure here.
Yeah.
So. You don't have to give me an immediate answer now. I'm just rolling the idea past you.
It's a big ask. It's a big ask to get that recall done. There'll be people living in Altrincham who were better positioned to represent Altrincham rather than me. I've never lived in Altrincham.
But these things are always about people doing stuff, aren't they?
Yeah.
Things only happen, in my experience, when you do stuff.
Yeah.
Things don't happen when you do nothing. Now, the Facebook group you're on, didn't you say there's like 1,000 people in there? Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of people who would vote for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We'd have to look into the triggering of a by-election. Yes. Because I've heard of that legislation. I don't know how it works, so I'd have to have a look at that. Because I remember reading online today, someone was saying about signing the petition, that you can then look at the interactive map of where the people across the country are signing. Yes. And if you look at that, you can see where people are signing. And if you pick one of those areas where thousands of people in that area are already signing, well, there's your base to call a...
Yes. So I actually looked at Altrincham and Sale West, and I think 3,000 people had signed it. Right. It was one of the darker colours, basically. Yeah. So if you look in London, by the way, nobody's signing, because of course the elites in London and all the the non-native population of London, they're not going to sign this thing. But interestingly, Altrincham Sale West, which is this Conor Rand character, a lot of people have signed that. In fact, more than 3,000. I think if it's 30,000. Yeah. So we can do the research anyway and have a look at that. Yeah. So that, cause I think Cresta Court has touched a nerve with the voters around here and the people around here. And this might be the chance now to do something about it.
Do you remember last week I was telling you that the 3 local councillors for Altrincham were all Green Party members?
Yes.
They've been out on the streets having stalls saying refugees are still welcome. They're now collecting winter coats and food parcels for the people at Cresta Court. They're your 3 Green councillors in Altrincham.
Wow. But people are giving them the mood, aren't
Yes, they are.
That's the bit I don't get.
Because those people who still support it, Altringham's quite a big place. They just don't live near the Cresta Court. It's not on their doorstep yet.
I want to kind of move on from this. It's all kind of linked, because I think all these things are linked, aren't they? The government is rubbish. The Cresta Court is an example of this crazy multicultural immigration thing we're doing. And behind all of this, these people who are coming into this country, and I've heard you describe as a Ponzi scheme before, this kind of myth, and I've put here lies we've been fed, this myth about the fact we need to bring people into this country. Do you want to give our gentle viewers your opinion on that and your view on that? Because I've got some interesting stats I wanted to roll past you.
Yeah, well, for nearly all my life, we've been told immigration brings wealth to the country. That, without immigrants, we won't have an economy, blah, blah. That's all been exploded now this last few months. We've seen the figures. But also last few years as well, we've had conversations around the native British people are not breeding enough. There's a discussion why. Well, why would you bring children into this world now? You can't afford housing. Streets aren't safe. We're not creating a country where you want to have children. But we're being told, well, we need more immigrants to do the jobs, to do the crap jobs, to look after our elderly relatives, to keep the NHS afloat. And from day one, I've thought to myself, this doesn't sound right. Because for the more immigrants you bring in, they then get old. So then we've got to bring more immigrants in to subsidise the fact we've got older immigrants now who are using the NHS, have retired. And it's a Ponzi scheme. Eventually a Ponzi scheme will collapse upon itself. Now, we had a population problem 13th, 14th century with the Black Death. And half, 3/4 of Europe up to that got killed with the Black Death. And what came out of that? Better wages for poor people, because all of a sudden there was a lack of supply of cheap labour. So farmers, if you wanted someone to plough your field, you had to pay more. People could choose what farms they wanted to work on, and that started empowering the poor people of this country. Then technology would come along. It might take me a day to plough a field, but if I then hook up a plough to a horse, I can plough 8 fields in a day. And that's what will happen now. If we stop this cheap immigration coming into the country, we would then invest money in technology. We would all be earning more money. People without skills doing manual work would earn more money. Our taxes then wouldn't have to subsidise their wages with tax credits and benefits. We could tax people less because there'd be less people on benefits. And next thing you know, we would have a much better country within 5-10 years. But we've got to rip the sticking plaster off that we called mass immigration. Rip it off. It'll be difficult for a couple of years. Then all the benefits will start coming through.
Well, you're dead right. And I think there was a report by the ONS actually out this week, and I don't know if you've read it. But basically what it says is a declining population, which is what they're arguing we have here, does not lead to a lower GDP, gross domestic product. Apparently, even with a fertility rate of 1.59, at the moment I think we were actually lower than that, about 1.44. GDP, assuming no increase in productivity and no increase in employment rates. So we'll get onto employment rates in a minute. So assuming no increase in productivity in this country, no increase in employment rates of the current people that are employed, with the native population, the GDP would only decline per person, per head, from 33,000 to 31,000 by 2,100. So basically, in 80 years' time, if we didn't have any immigration, we just have the native population, our GDP would barely decline with the existing population.
That's if nothing else changes.
That's if nothing else changes. If productivity increases 1% with the existing population, forget the immigrants, they've all gone. If productivity increases 1%, GDP would increase to £65,000 per head from £33,000 now.
Doubles.
It doubles. And if it was 2%, it goes up to 140,000 per head. So if we stayed exactly as we were as a country, with the people here, increase our productivity just slightly, we would be living a fantastic life, basically. It's a myth. The whole thing is a myth. Again, the lies they are telling us, basically.
And let's say we didn't get richer. Life would be better.
Yes.
Less crime.
Yeah.
More cohesion.
Yeah.
More in connection with your neighbours and the people around the corner from you and your work colleagues, because you all belong together. Less fractured society, less importing problems we've never seen before, like female genital mutilation, honour killing, acid attacks, which we've not had in this country for 100 years, acid attacks, until we re-imported it into the country. So if we had no extra money, or we took a reduction in living standards, everything else would improve. And that would be worth living, because our lives would be better, but with less money. I'd be quite happy earning less money if everything else improved.
I think you're right, and I think there's another myth in here as well. This myth that the population is declining. In fact, our population, native population, is actually increasing because births are still outstripping deaths. So the native population now is actually...
I didn't think it was.
Yes, apparently that's the latest. So because not as many people are dying, apart from
that makes sense now.
COVID, more people, even with these low birth rates, more people. So again, this is another myth that they keep pumping all the time, isn't there? This myth that it's got to be 2.1 births per family in order for the population to grow, because deaths are decreasing. That's not true anymore. So the native population, again, in this country, is increasing. There will be more older people, I get that, but it is increasing. That's another myth. And then the final point, we know that 10 million people of working age are not working in this country, and 1 million of those are under 25. So get those million back into work. Suddenly we're looking at a completely different dynamic, aren't we?
We are. And getting those people into work, my priority for that isn't about getting them off benefits and saving our taxes. For me, it's about giving them a better quality of life, because we've got too many people who are not working, who've convinced themselves they're sick, they've got depression, they've got anxiety. Some of them are just lying and know they're lying. And I've got stories of people I know who I can tell you stories of what lengths they go to lie. But getting up in the morning and working, regardless of the job, gives you self-respect, especially for men. You've got to be able to earn your wage and come home, and being given the choice to sit on your backside and smoke cannabis and play games and watch TV and do nothing is destroying the essence of you, men and women, but especially for men. It destroys the essence of you, and then you're just a drain on society, because then people like me and you have got to work slightly harder to compensate for those people not working, and those people know that, and it ruins their self-respect. We know that, so we hold them in contempt, and we need people off benefits and into work for their own sake, for no one else's sake, for their sake.
Very well said. We're talking about culture. I think you just said then we'd have a better quality of life if we focused on the people in this country, reduced immigration or whatever. There's been a bit of a Groundhog Day thing happen this week in London. I wonder if you're aware of it on Westminster Bridge. So What have you heard?
I'm not sure if you've got the latest information on that.
I think I have, but let me hear yours.
It was reported on Sunday, bit of stabbing on the bridge, which is right next to Big Ben.
Yeah.
Man stabbed.
And it's Groundhog Day, isn't it? Because
it's the bridge.
2017 was the same thing again on Westminster Street. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Then it's been reported now that it was a fight. There was no stabbing. It was a heart attack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I heard there were knives.
There may be knives on display. I don't know about that bit, but the police now are saying nobody was stabbed.
I was watching something the other day, and a Scottish guy who I follow, he was saying, why do we have no more witness statements anymore? We used to have, remember on the news, it would be somebody saying, oh, this happened or that. We don't have that anymore, do we? So events like this happen. There's no witnesses saying this happened or that happened. There's nobody spoken to by the media anymore. Because
you're not allowed to, because the description you'd be giving of the knife attacker wouldn't be the description the government wants you to give.
Yeah.
Because there was no description of these people.
Yes. Well, I've heard a description. I heard this is an altercation over the selling of nuts on the bridge. And the altercation was between a bunch of foreigners, Muslims, whatever it might be, and it all kicked off, and there were knives brandished.
Turf war.
Yeah, a turf war. But the point about this is, it's not a terrorist attack, I believe this. It's a nut attack.
Because it was a Sunday, and it was something like 8, 9 in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
The time threw me. It was like 8, 9 in the morning. I thought, I don't know what this is about.
Yeah. And therefore, I think the progressives will dismiss this. Oh, it's nothing to do with terrorism or Muslims or whatever. It's to do with somebody wanting to sell nuts on Westminster Bridge.
It's to do with immigration.
But it is to do with immigration, isn't it?
That's what it's to do with. Not to do with necessarily Muslims or terror. It's to do with immigration. Because you're not going to get English nut sellers fighting over nuts. But to be fair, I mean, in the 80s, we used to get ice cream wars in Greater Manchester.
Yes.
That turned violent.
That was immigrants as well, wasn't it?
Well, it's run by the Italians, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, those bloody immigrants again. But yeah, I mean, if knives must have been brandished for them to think somebody had been stabbed. But this isn't the way we should be dealing with issues in the UK.
Yeah.
We keep importing this crap.
Yes.
And that's not to say English people don't do this crap. I'm sure they do. But we've spent hundreds of years stamping it out in the English British population to a fact where we commit less crime now than migrants.
Yeah.
But we keep importing more criminals into the country.
We've got enough to deal with ours without having to import. This is the point, isn't it? Because this is another stupid lie that the progressives always say, or the left wing always say, when you say, oh, well, British people do that as well, or English people. Huh? Yeah, that's fine. We'll deal with those because they're our people. Do we have to deal with a foreign imported problem as well?
We have enough scumbags in this country without importing more scumbags.
Yeah. And I think that's the point I wanted to make about this, because there have been a number of events this week where places have closed, and I don't know if you're aware, but there was an incident at the US Embassy.
Yep.
A threatened bomb. There was an incident at Gatwick. There was an incident at Chester Station. There was an incident at Euston Station, and there was an incident at Edgware Road this week. These are all incidents where places are closed down, things are whatever, because of threats of bombs or whatever. But that isn't an English problem, is it? That isn't an English issue. Threats, bomb threats, all those things. This is...
It used to be.
Used to be.
No, it used to be. We had the IRA, you know, we had the suffragettes bombing things. So it has been. We don't know who's instigated this. So this could be some guy sat in his basement making these calls. The fact that no one seems to have claimed responsibility. It's not like we're freeing pandas from the zoo. We're going to blow up the US Embassy. We've got no idea at the moment what this is about.
It is unrelenting though, isn't it? We've talked about Manchester markets the other day, didn't we? All the concrete blocks there, policemen walking around with machine guns. You know,
that's to stop the diversity.
That's to stop. You know, we now live in a state of fear. Because of a foreign agency, don't we? I mean, that's where we are, and all these examples of that. This is becoming our way of life now. Yeah. And it isn't our way of life, is it?
And like I say, we had the IRA for many decades, but do you know what? They were a British problem. because the vast majority of them came from Northern Ireland,
Yes.
which is Britain,
Correct.
United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had that.
Yeah.
Same with the suffragettes blowing stuff up. Yeah, but they were British women. We've got our own nutcases,
Yeah.
but this Islamic terrorist stuff is imported.
Yes.
There was no. If we'd have been cleverer in the 70s and 80s, we wouldn't have this problem now. And that's the real gripe to this: is we imported this problem.
Did you hear the Met Commissioner this week talking about the major prescribed terror that we now have? Did you hear about this?
I saw some headlines, but I can't stand him, and I wouldn't believe a word he said anyway, so I didn't listen to it.
I was absolutely gobsmacked when I saw this, because he said, and he was being interviewed, he said for the first time since the Second World War, we have a domestic prescribed terrorist group of the extreme right wing. Now, he didn't name it.
Yeah.
He just said, "This, we now have a domestic." Are you aware of this right-wing terrorist group that's now a threat to our country?
No, but I'm sure it exists, and I'm sure it's 7 people, and I'm sure it's only come about because the government and the state hasn't dealt with Islamic terrorism, and I'm sure this is a reaction to that, and I'm sure these people, all 7 of them, are looking at violence to stop Islamic terrorism.
What's their name, Nick?
And that's the whole point, because if you gave you their name, the whole world would go, what? And would Google it, research it, and go, I can't find
There's
anything.
nothing here.
I'm sure there's an organisation with a name that they've uncovered, and they went, finally, Chief Constable of the Met, come here. We found a group who are far right, and it looks like they want to commit terrorism. Get on the news and tell people we found one.
So he then went on to say, this year or last year we had 14 terrorist plots, and he said, oh, by the way, these right-wing, this extreme is not as bad as the Islamist threat.
No.
Which I thought, oh, he's moving in the right direction now. And then went on to say there were 14 terrorist plots that they stopped last year. 10 were Islamist, 4 were right-wing.
Yeah.
Do you believe that for a moment?
I do, but you need to then have a look at all 14 cases, because the 4 they stopped on right wing would have been a guy in his basement was going to smear pig fat on a local mosque. That's a terrorist attack, and we stopped him doing that. 1 down. Look at the Islamist ones. Yeah, we stopped someone who'd made rice in a home and was going to stick it in the Manchester Arndale Centre and kill 50,000 people. So what they call a terrorist attack, it's a sliding scale.
So they label benign things as a terrorist plot. He, after saying that, should then tell us what those plots are, shouldn't he? That's what he should do. Because I think you're right. I think they will not be anything serious on the right-wing side of things. Because
they will not involve killing innocent people. Well, some of them may involve killing Muslims. I'm sure, that might have been what it was, but it would be nothing like the Islamic ones they stopped.
Yeah.
But they will look at anything by a white person to be able to claim it's not just radical Islam. They're dying.
Why though?
Because...
What's wrong with them?
Because it means they're racist. If all your terrorists are brown Muslims, then you're obviously a racist, because why can't you find any white Christian ones?
But most of them are. There are 39,000 Islamists on the MI5 watch list.
Yeah.
Nearly 40,000 people in this country of the MI5 watch list, and they're trying to now pin it on white extremist groups, the threat in this country. It's insanity.
That's identity politics. If we're going to have so many brown terrorists, we need some bloody white ones. Otherwise, it looks like we're picking on the brown people. And this whole problem we created ourselves from the 70s onwards. Not sure if you know about this, but the British government invited Islamists to live in London from the 70s onwards.
No.
Why? We're fighting a Cold War with Russia. We were the ones who helped the Afghan Taliban fight the Russian invasion.
Yes, yeah.
We're the ones who, were funding Islamists all over the world to fight people like Saddam Hussein, to fight back against Russia. They were all our proxy wars. And we funded these people, and we allowed their leaders to live in London. And many countries around the world were telling us off at the time, going, why are our enemies living in London and claim political asylum where, look what they're doing in our country? And at that moment in time, we couldn't see further ahead. This was a very convenient way of fighting the Cold War against Russia and some other dictators. So we allowed it go on. And then the Cold War ended, and next thing we know, we got 10,000 Islamists living in London. That's why we got the Hamas leaders living in London in council houses.
Yeah.
We invited them here and we funded them, and now it's all out of control. So do you ever watch Game of Thrones?
No, that's one thing I've never watched. Would you
No,
recommend it?
yes, I highly recommend it. It's really good. But there's a bit in it where the Queen, to keep in charge, she uses these radical religious people called the Sparrows.
Yeah.
And they're very fundamentalist, and she's using them to clamp down everybody. It's great. Then they turn on her because they're saying you're not pure, and they end up stripping her naked and making a march through the street apologising for being a ruthless leader. And that's what we've done with radical Islam. We thought we could control it, we thought we could use it to our own ends, and we did to a certain amount of time, but then they rebelled and went, no, you're the enemy as well. The English state is also the enemy, and we've lost control of it.
As happened in Iran.
Exactly, I wrote an article on that.
Yeah,
It was a socialist who planned the revolution. We're using the Islamists to overcome, thinking we can control Islam once we take charge. Revolution happened, and the Ayatollah Khomeini shot them all dead and took control.
I found something out last week, Nick, about you, which is that
I'm a woman.
That's well, I didn't like to mention that to the gentle listeners. If you often speak about grooming gangs, don't you? And you, I would say you use that as a grievance narrative around the Muslims and what you believe that they are doing. Is that correct?
I would have not
a grievance narrative, but you certainly speak openly about it, how it's been terrible and it's an Islamic problem and blah blah, Muslim problem and all that sort of stuff.
Part of it is, I've spent 20 years dealing with child sexual exploitation. I've had paedophiles arrested, I've had them prosecuted. When I worked with my charity, we saved at least 15 girls being raped and abused, all individual cases. The Muslim community, the Pakistani Muslim community has an issue with this. But it isn't by any means purely a Pakistani Muslim issue. There's lots of white paedophiles out there. People of all races abuse children. But when it comes to grooming gangs, that specific crime of sharing the abuse with your uncle and your cousin and your dad and passing it around, that is a predominantly Muslim heritage.
Correct. And you often talk about it, and I think you mentioned that it's not hundreds, this is thousands, you've said.
I reckon you're probably getting close to 100,000 white girls have been abused in this country and raped over the last 50 years.
By Islamic or Muslim grooming gangs?
By Muslim grooming gangs, yeah.
So you're therefore officially a right-wing extremist, did you know that?
Well, I already knew that. I've got
because the Home Office has a report out now that they used to train their people. And they say anybody who talks about grooming gangs and the problem they are, it's basically a grievance narrative used by right-wing extremists. So I'm shocked that I'm actually associating with you.
Well, if you're on Wikipedia and Google grooming gangs on Wikipedia, it says there that the grooming gang problem in the UK is a far right talking point.
Yes.
It says it on Wikipedia.
I'm shocked because I liked you, Nick, and to find out now you're a right-wing extremist is shocking. But also, there's another point here. This is, again, the Home Office. Do you believe that Western culture is under threat from mass migration?
Absolutely.
That apparently is also an extreme right-wing view, Nick. I'm disappointed.
I'm sure it is. I mean, you just look at what our government's been doing, then most of my views, according to them, will be classed as racist, Islamophobic, xenophobic, because I think they're taking us down the wrong path.
Yeah.
But
it is staggering to me that if there's somebody in the Home Office is watching this podcast now,
yeah,
they will regard you as a right-wing extremist.
yeah.
They will regard you of having extreme right-wing views.
Well, and they did exactly the same to the political prisoners.
Yes.
So this is just a narrative they've had for decades and decades.
But it's not even, they're hiding in plain sight. They're not even hiding in plain sight now, are they? They are hiding in plain sight. They're actually stating these things in their own documentation now. That the things you and I talk about are extreme right-wing views. But you and I know we are not extreme right-wing people, are we?
Well, it all depends who's judging us. To many people on the far left, we are far right extreme compared to their belief.
Yeah.
So it all depends where you're sitting when you're judging people. So from the far left, we do come across as far right because we're the opposite of everything they want. And the fact the government and the Home Office is coming out with this crap even more and more and more, I take as a good sign, because they now know that the underhand way of classing people as racist far right doesn't work anymore now. So they've lost that power. They're now having to rely on, we've got to come out and say it, because suggesting it isn't enough anymore. We've now got to state it, because they're losing the narrative, and the fact they've state it now proves to me they're losing the argument.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Because
it was kind of behind closed doors before, wasn't it?
It was behind closed doors.
Oh, no, if you say that, you are officially a right-wing extremist.
And society itself, communities themselves would police that language and those views. So you wouldn't want to be perceived as being racist, because your family and friends would go, oh, that's just too much, that. And that's what would keep people in check. And they're called social norms. But the social norms now are on our side, because we're completely free and valid to talk about immigration, the problems it brings, and the people nobody we know now thinks we're racist and far right.
No.
But the government now is having to resort to calling us names, because they are now not on the side of the social norms. They're now far left extremists.
That's a great point, that is. Yeah, it's interesting on that WhatsApp group I was talking about, the conversation moved on today. By the way, I haven't spent the whole day just going on that WhatsApp. I have been doing work as well.
Are you sure? You're not joining the 10 million unemployed, are you? So you can stay on WhatsApp.
It is fascinating at the moment. But they actually moved on to discussing, it's a predominantly white group, I think, because you can see their pictures.
That's why they invited you. They want a brown man.
Yeah, they want a brown man. Bring him in, then they won't call us racist.
Yeah.
But they've been talking about the Pakistani first cousin marriage thing. But quite openly talking about it as well. Which is quite... And
I couldn't have done that a few years ago.
You're dead right. I think a non-brown person talking about that, even a year ago... They would have been nervous, but they're speaking openly about it actually. Yeah. And they're talking about, you and I. You sent me some stats today, so I could kind of fire into this conversation about the fact that 50% of I think genetic disabilities are now.
33% of all children born in this country who have genetic defects are born from Pakistani marriages, which is first cousin marriages. 50% of all severely disabled babies born in this country, 50% of them are from Pakistani first cousin marriages.
That's shocking. But it's interesting, the group were talking about that quite openly, and consanguinity it's called, isn't it, when you're marrying basically very close blood, and I think you're right, it's something, our views now are becoming more mainstream. The things we're talking about now are becoming more mainstream. Thanks to the fact we have been talking about them as well. This is the point I was trying to make before about better to do something than nothing. And white people are now quite happy to talk about this because it's a real problem that our country's facing. Yeah. And I think we've crossed the Rubicon now in terms of it's out there and it's an open conversation, isn't it?
And when people say, what do you mean the problems it causes for society? It's a problem for them in their marriages and their family. Who picks up the health bill? Yeah. The NHS spends billions on this. That we shouldn't have to. Yeah. All because of first cousin marriages.
Yeah. Which have now been banned in Sweden.
Got banned,
I think,
a year or two ago in Norway. Sweden and Denmark are trying to get it through the parliaments now to ban first cousin marriages.
Yeah. So we're talking about Muslims. I watch something called History Debunked. Do you watch that? I think you've interviewed him.
He's been on my channel.
He's a really good guy, really interesting guy.
Simon Webb.
Yeah, I don't know what his background is or whatever, but he kind of posts.
Very clever. He's done him a lecturer. He's worked around the world.
Yeah.
You look at him and you think he's an old man who knows nothing, but he's full of knowledge.
I think that's just people just think that when they look at you, Nick, not him. But he had one of his little things, and it was like Muslims are running the BBC, and I was like, what the hell's he on about? So I watched it, and then I did my own research on this, and I was quite staggered by what I found. I don't know if you had a chance to look at some of the stuff I uncovered on
I saw the video.
Yeah. So the chairman of the BBC is a Muslim.
Yeah.
The guy who runs BBC Radio 4
Yeah.
is a Muslim.
Is his brother.
It's his brother.
Yeah.
So your two main national media outlets, television and radio, in this country are run by Muslims. Did you know that?
No, I've not got a problem with that.
I have.
I've not. If they're British born here, I've not got a problem with that. I had a problem with some of the others.
I have got a problem because you've got somebody who does not have the religion of this country is Christianity, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you've got somebody running our major government media organisations who is not of the basic religion in this country, Christianity. It can't be right.
I don't see a problem, and I don't see how we could discriminate against someone because of their religion. Because me and you complain all the time about the anti-white discrimination we get now.
Yeah.
We can't complain about that and then sanction discriminating against somebody because they're Muslim. Some of the other people on the list weren't even born in the country. They're the ones I've got a problem. So
you're happy with those two because they were both UK born.
Yeah.
But what about the fact that if you're running the BBC, which is the biggest it's a British broadcasting, it's the state run, and your religious beliefs have nothing to do with the country that you're representing.
In an ideal, I mean, the BBC's crap anyway.
No, I agree.
In an ideal world, he should be professional enough to not allow his beliefs to influence the job he does. That's what we call professionalism.
Yes. So
I would expect that from those. I'm not saying they're like that, but the whole BBC's woke and crap anyway.
Well, I think there's a definite pro-Muslim bias on the BBC. We've seen that recently with
Gaza.
With Gaza and Israel, haven't we? We've seen that massively so.
Yeah.
They're not even prepared to call Hamas a terrorist organisation.
Now, the argument there would be, is that because they're pro-Muslim or is that because they're anti-Israel? So this is the woke thing that's infiltrated that. They see the Palestinians as the persecuted and Israel as the oppressor. So let's say the Palestinians were all Hindus. The BBC will still be anti-Israel.
Yeah. But there was we quoted some stats the other day. There was something like 1,500 identified cases. I can't remember what of basic anti-Semitic narrative on the BBC. Shouldn't he resign anyway then in that case? Because he's in charge. He's a Muslim, and he's overseeing documented anti-Semitic behaviour by his own organisation. So I'll take your argument, which is if he's a Muslim and he's unbiased, that's fine. But under his tutelage and his brother's tutelage, we're seeing all these examples of anti-Jewish, pro-Muslim bias.
And people should be sacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But surely he should be sacked more than anybody because he's a Muslim.
He shouldn't be sacked because he's a Muslim. He should be sacked if he's running an unfit BBC, which he is. So there's a good chance he should be sacked or kicked off the board. But if he was doing his job properly, then the producers of some of the news programmes would be sacked for being biased in their reporting. But no one ever gets sacked from the BBC. The BBC is like working for the council. Likes to work for the council. You can't get sacked from a council, and you can't get sacked from the BBC.
Yeah.
But what's some of the other names that?
So Shabana Mahmood.
That's the one that.
She's a 40-year-old. She's an MP, And she is now the Lord Chancellor.
Yeah.
The Lord Chancellor is the highest legal position
in the country.
in the country.
Yeah, and she wasn't born in this country.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, wasn't born in. I think can't remember where she's born now. Not born in the country. I've got a problem with that. I don't think you should be able to stand for public office in this country, from councillor to MP to minister, whatever, if you weren't born here.
Oh, that's a new one. I've not heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, there is some precedent for that, isn't there? Because in America, you can't be president.
Yeah, if you weren't
unless
born
you're not
there.
born in
Yeah.
the United States.
Yeah, but I would have all our political positions like that. You have to be born here. People who say that's unfair, I'd say, well, no. It gives an incentive to immigrants that, yes, you can't stand, but if you do a good job, your children can stand in this country. I think we need to stop having foreigners being lawmakers in this country. It makes no sense.
Yeah. So you're talking about councillors, you're talking about MPs.
Every elected position.
Every elected position. That's interesting. I like
And
that.
for the people who are already in position now, well, they just can't stand again. So I wouldn't then kick them out.
All right, that's good of you.
Because that's undemocratic. I would then change the law, and from when their position, from their term ends, they could never stand again because they weren't born in this country.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a radical ask.
Yeah. So what about Sadiq Khan? Was he born in this country?
Yes.
Anwar Sawa, the leader of the Scottish Labour Party.
I'm not sure where he was born.
Hamza Yousaf, the leader of the SNP.
He was born here.
Oh, he's not leader.
He's not leader anymore, but he was born here.
Yeah. So all these characters, the point here is all these characters in very influential positions in our country are Muslims.
Again, I've not got a problem with that. My problem would be on their performance and what they do. My problem isn't on their religion.
Well, maybe I'd like to extend your rule a bit more to say you not only have to be born in this country, you have to be practicing or a member of the primary religious group in this country as well.
No, I couldn't go down that line.
I know, but
I think religion's a private matter between you and your God. And once we start picking, because that's what the woke do, once we start picking certain ideologies are better than other ideologies, and you're going to be judged on that ideology, and you can't get those benefits and those positions because of your ideology, and that's all religion is, a belief system, then would get to a stage where other people then will decide what the favourite ideology is at the moment.
Well, no, because we know what the favourite ideology is. It's we're a Christian country, aren't we?
But, well, how do you define that?
Christianity.
So how do you define that?
That's a hard question.
How do you define we're a Christian country? So are you going to judge it on how many people go to church? Do you judge it on...
The demographics, I think it's been a Christian country, it has been. I think, although I know the percentage is dropping, isn't it?
So when those percentages keep dropping, and we're not a Christian country anymore then, would you be quite happy then for Christians to be persecuted and couldn't get senior jobs then because...
Well, no, because in tandem with that, I would be encouraging more people to embrace Christianity as well. And I'd bring back Sunday school and all that sort of stuff, and we'd be practicing it in schools as well, basically. Because you know my feelings about Christianity, I think the loss of Christianity in this country, and you know I'm an atheist, by the way, but the loss of Christianity and the adherence to the moral framework of Christianity is one of our biggest issues, I think.
I didn't know you were an atheist.
Yes.
I thought you were going to church for months.
Yes.
Was that trying to find God?
No.
But you couldn't find him?
No, I think I explained this to you. I went because I wanted to understand and recapture what I did as a child and the Christian framework that I was brought up in, basically. Well, I thought I told you that.
You told me all that, but you never mentioned that
I was an atheist.
You were an atheist.
Yes, I know, it's a strange conflict, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I understand why. I understand why. There's something, going back to your childhood, the serenity of a church.
Correct. Except it wasn't serene, did I tell you?
It was all LGBT crap, wasn't it?
It wasn't. I think there were 2 lesbian priests or vicars or whatever they are now. Yeah. But it wasn't that. Even that wasn't an issue for me.
You had kids running around.
It was the kids running around. So when they were reading out the fables and all that sort of stuff, not the fables, what are they, parables or whatever, I was trying to listen, and there were kids banging in the crowd, and it's like they had a little Sunday school, and I was like, what happened to just a normal, quiet church where you can go and listen to stuff? Because I like all that.
Yeah, that's because you got women priests.
Yes, there were 2 women creative priests in that one. So that was it. I want to finish this session on something we talked. I sent you a video on. It was Dana White.
Yep.
Who's the chair of UFC, and he was being interviewed by Bill Maher.
No.
And did you manage to watch it?
I don't think so.
I thought it was absolutely fascinating. It's literally, if you get a chance to watch it, it's literally about 20 seconds.
Right.
And Bill Maher, who is a well-known left-wing, he has now a lot of these interviews, they have these kind of off-the-record interviews where they sit in comfy chairs and have a chat. It was one of those with Dana White. Dana White is now quite a big figure in America, not just because of the UFC, because of his relationship with Trump.
So I'm not too keen on Dana White because he's got a girly name. But I wouldn't say that to his face.
I wouldn't say that to his face if I was you. I wouldn't say that to his face. So Bill Maher is a very left-wing. You were talking about smoking marijuana.
Yeah.
Bill Maher's a bit like, but he's a left-wing progressive, a Democrat, who is becoming rapidly disenfranchised and disenchanted with what they're doing. So he started to move more towards the centre or to the centre-right in terms of his views, and he doesn't understand all the trans stuff. He doesn't understand all.
He's anti-woke.
He's anti-woke, basically.
He's a left progressive anti-woke, which makes him a bit unique.
I mean, what he says, which I think is right, is he hasn't actually changed his views.
Yeah.
The left have moved
just gone
away.
mental.
Gone mental. So he was chatting, but he's still a little bit of a wimp. He hasn't got any kids. He smokes marijuana. He's a bit, woo-woo as well.
Yeah. He still thinks Trump's a Nazi, and he goes off and tatters like, just when I think you're coming to the light, you go back to the dark side.
So my wife's followed him for years, and she likes him, but she now can't watch him anymore.
Yeah.
She's the same as you. She thinks she sees a glimmer when it's nearly there, and then he goes back. But he was interviewing Dana White, and he said to Dana White, what about your feelings? How do you feel about things? And he said,
I have seen this. I did watch it when he sent it to me.
And Dana White said, I'm not that man. I don't talk about my feelings.
Yeah.
And he said, fuck your feelings, And he said, men shouldn't talk. And he said, when I see men on talking about their feelings and all that sort of stuff, no, that isn't it. He said, I've got a wife, I've got kids.
Yeah.
I get up in the morning, I go to work, and earn money for my family, and I come back. I don't talk about my feelings.
Yeah.
I don't think about my feelings. He said, fuck your feelings, be a man.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, at last.
Yeah.
Somebody's saying it like it should be,
When what he was saying, I was thinking, that's what I've been saying for years.
Yes, it's
exactly what he's been saying. He was saying, men, don't cry, don't talk about the feelings, get up, work, try harder, sacrifice so you can be better, look after your wife, look after your children, protect them. That's your job, not going on about your feelings. Spot on.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and it was so good to see Bill Maher's face when he was like, he just didn't get it, I don't think. And it kind of goes back to what we talked about last week about the adult men are back in the room, aren't they? And this is a message to men. And I think it's a great message to young men as well. Be a freaking man. Don't talk about your feelings. Get up, go to work, and make things happen. And protect your family, protect your partner, and your kids as well. I thought it was fantastic.
Be all you can be, because the only person holding you back is you.
Yeah.
And a couple hundred years ago, everything was holding you back. Society, how you were born, no education, rampant disease. Nothing's holding you back now in the West, especially in this country. The only thing stopping you being successful, and you get to judge what success is, no one else, but the only person holding you back is you as a man, and you need to kick out this woke, pathetic, I'm a victim as well. You're not a victim, you're a man. Your job is about toil. Your job is carrying burdens for other people. That's your job. Your job isn't nice and sweet and fluffy. Your job is doing all the dangerous, nasty, dirty stuff in society, and you're doing it for your wife and your children. That's what gets you up in the morning. That's what keeps you going, and that's why you risk your life for them, because they're more important. I'm sick of men talking about their feelings and being victims.
On that motivational stunner, Mr. Nick Buckley, MBE, thank you very much.
Thank you.